Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Dave Higgins. Welcome to Sandbox Xplorer. Alright, so there's been speculation for a while, and I just mentioned it in my July news and release video that we might be hearing about the Switch Mini this month. I wasn't, sold on it. I didn't think we were gonna hear about it. I kind of thought it was gonna be, rumors that are made up. But they announced it today that the Switch Lite is official. It's coming out. It's coming out in September, and they had a little video where they showcased some of the features and showed us the product, what it looks like, and we're gonna talk about that. First off, I want to mention that in the beginning of the video, he did a little shout out to us Switch owners, and I really felt the gratitude and the respect from that bow, so to you, back at you. Sorry if my bow is terrible. I don't really bow, but I felt like it was necessary and deserving of it, so I did it. So one thing that I really like a lot about the Nintendo Switch Lite, one of my favorite features that they've added, is an actual D-pad. I love it. I don't know why we don't have an official Joy-Con with a D-pad yet, but it's on the Switch Lite, so hopefully if that does well, which I'm assuming that it's going to do well, because people who didn't want to spend $300 on a Switch before are going to have a lot easier time spending another $100 off that. $200 is, it's still kind of an investment, but it's a lot easier pill to swallow than $300 if you're not like a hardcore gamer, or you've, not really been able to save up the money for it or something. So if this system does well with the D-pad being on there, then I'm assuming that we're gonna get a new set of Joy-Cons that have an actual D-pad on them that we can buy and have the legit D-pad on our original Switches. One thing that I'm frankly surprised to see and kind of disappointed about is that the front of the system, the bezel takes up kind of a lot of room. I expected it to be relatively bezel-less, or at least similar. I guess it's similar to the one on the Switch now. It's just that the color takes up the place of it, so it looks bigger, I guess, because brighter colors look bigger than darker colors. But the main reason, honestly, that I'm disappointed to see that, not just for people who want to get the system because it would be nicer to have a little bบmore screen on there that they could have had instead of doing that, but for me, the main reason is because I really do hope that Nintendo releases a Pro version of the Switch that has, a more powerful hard drive, etc. Just all the components of it, I want them to be more powerful, make the games look a little better, run a little faster, smoother. I hope that happens, and if that does happen, I really want to have a bezel-less screen, or as close to it as you can get without them, So that's the main reason I'm disappointed. But overall, I do like the way that it looks. It actually reminds me of like a Game Boy Color for some reason. I know that it's probably more similar to like a Game Boy Advance in style, but it really reminds me of like a Game Boy Color back in the day. And I'm jealous of any of the kids out there who, when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old with a Game Boy Color, I would have loved to have a Switch, especially the Switch Mini. It would have just been like the version of a Game Boy, but a Switch, basically. Like, I wanted a console on the go. We all wanted a console on the go, and at the time we had what we could have, pretty much, and that was, a little handheld device that was great, had a lot of great games on it, Pokemon and others. Mainly Pokemon. I feel like Pokemon is really the driving force from Game Boy Color, but there was tons of other games too, but they just don't come to mind because Pokemon was just so amazing. Now, if we talked about Game Boy Advance, I could think of a lot more, but anyways, this isn't about that. But all y'all kids who get to have this now, enjoy it, because it's pretty sick that you get to have a console on the go with you. I didn't have that. Appreciate what you have. But even though the bezel takes up, some of the screen, whatever, it still has a 5.5-inch screen, and that's compared to the 6.2-inch screen on the OG Switch. It's not that much of a difference. It's a decent difference, but it's still a good size screen, so that's pretty cool. It's compact and portable, but you still have a nice screen to play on. They didn't talk about it in the video or put it on the website anywhere like that, but I'm wondering if the screen itself is gonna have a better quality to it. I don't know if they're gonna use like OLED technology as opposed to the LCD screen that they have on the Switch, which would just make the colors pop a little more and it look nicer, even though it would have the same resolution and all that. I don't know. I don't know if they mentioned it. I don't think they mentioned it anywhere, so I didn't see it. So maybe, who knows, maybe you'll open it up and go, wow, this looks so much better, but that's something I'd like to see if they release a Pro. I would like to see an OLED screen. I really like the way that looks. Compared to an LCD screen, it just looks a lot more rich and I think that that alone, even if you didn't change any of the resolution specs, any of that, it would just make the screen look a lot more rich, it would pop more, and you'd feel a lot more immersed in the game. Little subtle details like that really make a big difference, so yeah. They're releasing 3 colors for the system. They're releasing yellow, gray, and turquoise. These models are coming out September 20th of this year, and they didn't talk about it in the video, but they're releasing a Pokemon version November 8th, a week before Pokemon Sword and Shield come out. On my birthday. Sorry, I keep mentioning that every time I talk about Pokemon, but it comes out on my birthday, so I'm gonna beat that into the ground until it comes out because I can. Things don't usually come out, especially great games like that. Even though I really have a problem with the fact they're not releasing them with a national Pokedex, but that's besides the point. But yeah, September 20th for these 3 colors and November 8th for the Pokemon model. I don't know if they're gonna do any other ones. Maybe they'll do an Animal Crossing one? I don't know, I would, but that's just me. Now, it's interesting that they're using the term Lite again for this model because they used it for the Nintendo DS. The Nintendo DS Lite was actually an improvement of the original DS, and this isn't a downgrade exactly, but it's like a diet version of the Switch, so it's a different usage of Lite, but I get what they're going for with it. It makes sense, I get it. They had a little video montage of a bunch of people playing the Switch Lite in a bunch of different areas, sometimes playing games that kind of coincided with the areas that they were in, showcasing the ability to be able to play it wherever and whenever you want. There's some similarities and some differences between the new model and the OG one, and on their website they have a page dedicated to comparing them so you can see which model's right for you depending on what features you are interested in, so you can make the right choice for yourself. One of the biggest features in my mind that's going to determine whether or not people go with this model or the original one is that the fact that the Lite, it doesn't connect to the TV. You can't dock it, it doesn't have the ability to put it in the dock, and it doesn't have an output to the TV, so you can only play in handheld mode. It's dedicated specifically to handheld, so depending on whether or not you want to play on the TV or just on handheld mode, a mix of them, that'll determine whether or not you choose to go with this model or the original one. Personally, I just play in handheld mode about 99% of the time. The only time I really play in dock mode is when I'm trying to record game footage with my Elgato HD 60S capture card. So if you're a content creator on YouTube or another service, then that might be a determining factor if you're trying to play Switch, because if you can't record it, then you're gonna have a hard time producing content. I'm assuming that Nintendo is going to release an official peripheral device that you can connect one side to the USB-C connector on the Switch and the other side to the HDMI port on the TV, so that way you can play on the TV but not have it docked. I thought that existed. I haven't looked into it. Apparently it must not, but if Nintendo doesn't come up with that, then somebody else probably will, unless it's impossible, but I doubt it because people can figure out ways around stuff. And if somebody can come up with that, then they're gonna make bank, so look out for that. I'm sure that's gonna happen at some point in time. And I'm sure it's gonna be Nintendo, because Nintendo likes money, and why would you not make money when you can make money? Especially when it helps people do something that they wanna do. Win-win. Another major difference between the Lite model and the flagship model of the Switch is that the Joy-Cons aren't really Joy-Cons because they're attached to the actual hardware. They're a part of the case, so you can't detach them, you just have to use it in handheld mode. I personally like that because if you're a little bit OCD like me, then there's a little bit of a wiggle to the Joy-Cons, and that bothers me. Luckily, if you saw my review of the Skull and Cold grip case, then you'll see that I don't have any wiggle room because the case holds it all in place, so I don't have that problem. But if I didn't have this case, then it would be slightly wiggling, and I don't like that. So if you have the, I almost call it the Mini, if you have the Lite, then you don't run into that problem, so you know, that's one thing that I do like about it. Also, when I do play in dock mode, I just use my Pro Controller. I don't like to use the Joy-Cons separately from it. The little, whatever you call it, grips for the Joy-Cons, it's all right. It's good, it's decent, but I prefer the Pro Controller to it, and having that, I can't go back to that. If you were able to display the Switch Lite on the TV, then I'd be totally happy with just using the Pro Controller when I did that, so if you were gonna play a game and you wanted to use the Pro Controller, then like that's the way to go in my mind, if you're gonna use a separate controller. I mean, the only time you really need to use the Joy-Cons separately off of the system is when you're playing like 1-2 Switch, which is a terrible game, horrible garbage game that should have either stayed a tech demo, been included with the system, or never existed. It's really only good for if you're like drinking at a party and everyone's like, let's play 1-2 Switch. And even then, it doesn't have a huge longevity, and you know, one time is pretty fun, and then after that, eh. If you're really gonna be in a situation where you're having some drinks and you're partying with your friends, then the go-to game is Super Mario Party, and that game also is kind of eh, because that one also requires you to only use the Joy-Cons separately, single, no handheld mode. Not a huge fan. Don't want to get into that right now so much, but I wish that they had the ability to just play the game in handheld mode, and maybe I can't play some of the games, or I have a different control scheme for them, so it's, you know, But if you want to play those games, then you can buy a separate pair of Joy-Cons and you can use them there. The only issue is that you don't have tabletop mode, so that kind of puts a damper on your playing because there isn't a stand on it, so you can't play tabletop. However, if you watch that Skeleton Co grip case review that I mentioned a moment ago, I actually also reviewed the Genki Bluetooth adapter, and for the Genki, that comes with this nice stand. You know about this if you watched that other video. It is a really nice stand. If you get the combo kit, it comes with it, and if you got this and you got the mini, the Lite, I'm gonna get used to calling it the Lite because I'm so used to calling it the Mini from all the rumors. But if you get the Lite and you get this, then you could play technically in tabletop mode. As a side note, I wanna mention this because in my other video where I reviewed the Genki, I opened up this and I hadn't used it before because I just opened it and I was figuring it out, and apparently I got it for the most part right. You open it up like this and you pull it back and, you know, stands on there like that. Well, actually you gotta open up these tabs so it stands on there. So you stand it on there like that, but I opened this up and I put that up here because I don't know, it made sense. It sits like that. But actually what this is for is if you want to play, like, you know, at this angle, you can do that. But if you're playing somewhere where you want to play low, you can actually play it more looking down. Like if you're on an airplane, I think that's what they mentioned in the comment to me, was that if you're on an airplane, you wouldn't need to be looking down. You can't be always at like an angle like that. You can actually put it like that so you can look more straight down at it. So just so you know, that's how you do that. I wanted to correct what I said before since I was wrong about that. But if you have this, then this is a really, really good thing to have for the Lite because then you can play tabletop mode. As I said before, there's a D-pad on it. Finally, we have a D-pad for the Switch that's an official one. We had the Hori, their version of the Joy-Cons that, you know, it's like licensed by Nintendo, but it's not like Nintendo. So those are decent, but we don't have official Nintendo ones, and it's nice to see Nintendo finally go back to having D-pad because we should have it. Why didn't we have it before? At least an option to have that from Nintendo. I don't know, but one thing I like about it is it looks like it's like nice and beefy, like not too beefy where it's gonna have, you know, it's gonna be hard to use and it's gonna be chunky. It doesn't look like flimsy or light. It looks like it'll be soft to the touch, but you have enough input that it's kind of, you know, it looks like you'll be able to do what you want and it'll flow evenly. Granted, this is just me looking at it and making a judgment off of how it looks, but you know, you can sometimes make a good judgment off of how things look, so that's just how it seems to me. Now, the actual Switch itself is a little bit shorter, so, you know, there's a little less space to grab the actual console. So for someone who has bigger hands like me, that's not as appealing, but if you have smaller hands, then that might fit better. And if you have like, you know, more adaptable hands that are bigger, then that could be right up your alley. Now, because the Joy-Cons are, you know, shorter or not as big, the IR motion control and the HD rumble are not included. They're not integrated into the system. I'm not upset that the IR motion controls aren't in it because I don't really like using that feature so much. It's really only for like 1-2 Switch. And I mean, there's other games, like you can use it with Skyrim and stuff where you can, but I don't know, I'd rather play in handheld mode. That's what appeals to me more often. And if I'm not playing handheld mode, I'm using, you know, Pro Controller or the grip for the Switch Joy-Cons. The thing that does bother me that is not included is that the HD rumble's not in it, and I know that there aren't a lot of games that like fully use the HD rumble ability, but some games do, and even if it's not fully using it, it's still like, rumble. I don't know if there's like any rumble at all to it. Maybe there's like something in there, but I'm assuming that there's none at all in it. And I like that feature. Now that I have it, I can't go back. You know, that's something that I care about. Maybe you don't, but you know, that's just something else to consider. But that goes back to when I mentioned before that if you want to play games like 1-2 Switch or Super Mario Party, where it requires the Joy-Con separate by themselves, which they use the HD rumble and the IR motion cameras to play the game, then you can buy those separately and use them for it. So, you know, you're not out of luck if you want to play those games. It's just that you got to go through like a couple extra steps basically. You can't just go and take them off. Not a big deal. I'd say, you know, don't even get those games. Those games are kind of terrible. Maybe Super Mario Party if you really want to, but I wouldn't pay full price for it. I paid full price for it. The only party games you really need for the Switch are Super Smash Bros. And Mario Kart. That's about it. Get those games and you're good. Also in the video, he let us know how to determine whether or not a game supports handheld mode, so that way you don't buy a game and go, oh, I can't play it on my Switch. I mean, you can play it. We just talked about you need to have separate Joy-Cons, but in the bottom of the box, it'll show you a little symbol that says handheld mode. That way you know that you're getting a game that you can play in handheld mode. For us all digital Switch owners, just Google it. Pretty much all games support handheld mode, but if you do buy a Lite, then check just in case. Now, if you go to the website that compares and contrasts the features on both of the models, you're gonna see all the different features displayed next to each other so you can see which one's right for you. And I'll put a link to this webpage in the description below so you can go there yourself and check afterwards. But what we see here is that the original flagship model has a $300 price point, as opposed to the Nintendo Switch Lite, which has a $200 price point, which is a lot more appealing to people who, like I said before, weren't looking to spend $300 and didn't want to have that much of an investment. So that's one thing that's advantage to the Switch Lite. We see that the original model has the ability to play handheld, docked, and tabletop mode, where the Switch Lite model just has the ability to play handheld. A lot of people just play handheld and don't have a reason to put it in docked mode, so if you're that person, then here you go. Perfect. The original system supports all games on the Switch, and the Switch Lite supports all handheld games, but again, you can play the other games, you just need to have separate Joy-Cons. If you were gonna do that, you're gonna be spending another like $60, so it's almost just worth it to get the original model. But if you're not gonna get those, then you're saving $100, and you know, that's not bad. The original model has Joy-Con controllers included, and they have the IR camera, and they have the HD rumble feature, where the Switch Lite does not come with Joy-Cons, and it does not have those features included. Also, just so you know, if you do get Joy-Cons separate for the Switch Lite, you do need to get some sort of charging dock, because the way you charge the Joy-Cons is you put them in the system, and the system charges them. So if you don't have the system to charge them, you can't charge the Joy-Cons, so you'd also need to invest in that. So that's just something else to keep in mind. The original Switch comes with a dock and an HDMI cable, so you can put it in the dock and play it on the TV, where, as we've talked about plenty of times in this video, the Switch Lite, you cannot do that. It does not come with a dock. You can only play it in handheld mode. The original Switch is 4 inches high, 9.4 inches long, 0.55 inches deep, with the Joy-Cons attached. The Switch Lite is 3.6 inches high, so it's a little bit shorter. It's just under half an inch shorter. It's 8.2 inches long, so it's just over an inch shorter. It's also 0.55 inches deep, so it's also the same depth, but it's a little smaller in the other aspects. The original one weighs 0.88 pounds with the controllers attached, and the new one's about 0.61, so it's a little bit lighter. It's not crazy lighter, but you know, 0.2 is a pretty decent amount of weight if you're holding one in one hand and one in the other, because it just is. We can tell these kinds of things because we're gamers. Like I said before, the original system has a 6.2 inch screen, where the new one has a 5.5 inch screen. It's still a touch screen, so you don't lose that feature at all. That's a good thing, because that wouldn't make any sense. But it's a little bit smaller, but it's still nice. It's still a big screen that you can look at, and a little more portable, so that's pretty good. Pretty good. I think that's like the third video I've referenced that in now. If you don't watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, watch it. Trust me, you will love it. Now, this kind of surprised me. I thought that the battery on it would be not necessarily significantly longer, but longer than it is. The original one, depending on what you're playing, is 2.5 hours to 6.5 hours. For me, I don't think I ever really get more than like 3 or 4 hours out of it, because I don't know, even when I play games like Stardew Valley, I feel like my battery drains pretty quick. Maybe I have the brightness all the way up because I like to actually see what I'm playing. Some people can play with the brightness down, I cannot. So If you play with the brightness all the way down, you play a really, really low demanding game, then maybe you'll get 6.5 hours out, but I've never gotten that much time in playing ever with my Switch, not unless it's plugged in. So yeah, the new model gets about 3 hours to 7 hours, so you get like a half an hour longer minimum, allegedly. I expected to see more of like a minimum of like 5 hours and maybe like 10 or so hours maximum, because it would be a lot more appealing of a system if they had that feature, if they had an increased battery life. I expected that, and I'm surprised that's not a feature, but you get a little bit more. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything they talked about today in the video, and I'm excited that it's a real thing. I'm glad that they're moving forward with new models. I really hope that they have a Pro version. It's probably not going to be called the Pro version, but we know what I'm talking about. I want a more powerful version of the Switch that can handle more and maybe even retroactively make some of the games look better on it. I don't know. I'd like that to happen, but so far what we have is a Switch Lite. It's a step in the right direction where they're being innovative. They have the D-pad. That's honestly probably the best news out of everything, is that they have an official D-pad on the Switch now. That's a step in the right direction. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in buying a Switch Lite. If you have a Switch already and you want to buy that as well, let me know. If you don't have one, I don't know, let's talk about it, because I'm interested to see people's opinions on it. I know mine, you heard mine, but I want to know yours. Like I mentioned at least once, probably twice in the video, comes out September 20th, so you got a little bit of time to make a decision if you want to jump on this one or if you want to go on the original one. And if you're going to wait a little bit longer, you can get the Pokemon one on November 8th. I'm personally going to just stick with my original Switch because bigger screen, HD rumble. I already have a Skull & Co case, which I love, so I wouldn't be able to put that in there, but I digress. If you like this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more of my videos, hit the little bell because then you'll get notified when I release a new video, and that is important. And yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one.